read the usual announcement. Oh, let's see. Pursuant to chapter, got it here, it'll distract me. Pursuant to chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted via remote means. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so in the following manner. Join the Zoom meeting at the URL and info listed in the agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so for reasons of economic hardship and despite best efforts, we will post on the Westborough Public Library's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. This meeting is being recorded. You should have all seen the announcement. And we have just wanted to let people know we added an additional discussion item to the minutes, to the agenda, I'm sorry. Okay, so with that said, let's see. Approval of minutes. Mary sent out minutes from last week, and I have actually, must confess, I didn't get a chance to review them. Has a reasonable number of people gotten a chance to review them?
I haven't.
No.
Me neither.
Okay, I move a vote of apology to Mary.
No, it's my apologies. It's been taking a while to get them out. I owe you a bunch.
Okay.
So I'll get you the rest of them and we'll vote on a whole bunch next time.
Vote on a whole bunch. Okay, very good.
Okay.
Public forum. I am not seeing any members of the public here, although someone is connecting to audio. I'm not sure who that is.
That's someone from LPAA.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I see the logo in there. Okay.
Yes.
If any members of the public turn up, I'll invite them to speak. But for now, we can go on to discussion of the special town meeting presentation. And we've gotten a lot of information from several people. I would like to start with what I'm calling discussion of possible cost reduction initiatives. The Vertex and LPA teams have been working together, and with the have been working together to sort of refine the numbers and discussion and do some value engineering for ways we can cut the cost on this. And so I'm going to invite John Lemieux to tell us what give us a summary of all that.
Thanks, Ed. I'm going to share my. Oh, can you enable the screen sharing? Yeah,
Yep,
no
hold on.
worries.
Okay, you're good.
Okay. Thank you. Can everybody see this?
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so this first column here, this is before we get into this, basically what happened after town meeting is LPA, Fontaine, Vertex got together at LPA's office to try to talk about some ways that, what can we do with what we have right now? Okay, and we talked about looking for some low-hanging fruit from a VE standpoint, looking for some potential square foot reductions, as we talked about last time as well. And kind of this is the results of all of that. Just, and again, we heard last meeting pretty loud and clear, if the only thing you could reduce this is 1,160 square feet, don't do it, and so that's, but we want to show you kind of where everything kind of lays out. So what we have here is, again, this is the total project budget. Okay. This is the one that was submitted at town meeting. All right. And I want to just show again, all the detail, the construction number, the professional services cost, FF&E, other costs. Again, the other costs are largely the moving. And, kind of we summarize them in this short block form here. Basically 5 lines of detail, a total, a grant, and a total amount due by the town net the grant. So the first thing, we should see here, I gotta get rid of this. So what I will say is there was some value engineering that went on that we were able to, and I guess largely had to do with the exterior cladding, okay, that was able to save, when you talk about hard costs, hard costs plus soft costs, contingencies, all of that, basically able to pull about $1.5 million out of the project again, as presented at town meeting, changes just to some exterior cladding and some clarifications and, you know, on some demo numbers, a couple of tweaks here and there. I guess, you know, either Eric or Frank, I don't know if I don't want to get too deep into the weeds about the VE, but I guess the way I would characterize it is changes to the facade and aesthetics of the building from a finishes standpoint, not touching square footage, not impacting program in any way. That's how I would characterize those things. Would you guys say anything to add to that?
Just that the big item, biggest change in terms of cost came about with the exterior cladding. That was a change from a natural copper metal panel to a painted aluminum metal panel. Natural copper is more expensive. It wasn't until we actually saw the costs that we realized just how much more expensive it was. I think it's one of those things that either because of supply chain issues or material shortages or whatnot, but the price of the natural copper has really skyrocketed. So we proposed to change that to a painted aluminum, which is, you know, it's a perfectly acceptable material. It's formed the same way. It's just not going to weather. You know, it's not going to have that patina like natural copper does over, you know, 100 years. But we would support that change, and it saved I forget what the number was, John, but it was pretty significant.
Yeah, it was about $600,000 to $700,000 just on that line item. But again, everyone has to remember that construction number drives a certain amount of your soft costs and drives the contingency amounts that we carry as well. So, you know, in the end, you know, a $600,000 change can total up to, you know, $800,000, you know, of total project budget. But bottom line is, you know, we were able to work in concert with Fontaine, and they were able to give us a revised cost estimate that basically, you know, had a, you know, I can scroll up here. You know, the original, the estimate went from 27.5 to 26.2. All right, and that was, you know, that enabled us to be able to take, you know, a good chunk. Oh, I'm sorry, we're missing one. Sorry. There's an interim step there. 27.5 to 26.3. I'll get into the other option in a second. And then obviously some other numbers you can see that, you know, your soft costs drop, some of your professional FF&E services drop. The other item, you know, you still have to relocate. So it's $1 million whether you do this work or not. That's what we're carrying for the, you know, offsite library. But bottom line is we would be looking with this option. So instead of present, you know, this is the number that's in the 36,698,556 is the number that's, you know, associated with the article. We'd be looking at a number now of 35,276. That being said, we also have one other VE item that came up at the end. There's some screening up along the mansard roof, which right now we look like we could probably pull another $100,000 out of the project if we made that change as well. Eric, do you want to just talk briefly about what that is?
At the roof level above the children's space, we have basically a flat membrane roof, low slope membrane roof, and we will have HVAC equipment on that rooftop. And without some sort of screening, not only will you be able to see the HVAC equipment, you'll be able to hear it too. So we want to screen that visually and acoustically. And we had originally proposed something that was actually like a real mansard roof with gutters and downspouts, and it was actually conditioned space, so it was relatively complex build out. We looked at it again and we said we can simplify this. It's up high. Nobody's really going to see that connection, and we treated it more like a regular, just a screen type of design rather than an actual part of the building with a roof and conditioned space. So long story short, it was a simpler detail. It was easier to build, and it won't impact the building in any way. It'll still serve its purpose to screen the HVAC equipment from view and acoustically as well. So we supported that as well.
Let me
Thank you, Eric. So the only reason why these are separated here, guys, is because I have an estimate from Fontaine for this amount, this 26,333. And then there was an email that subsequently followed that said, hey, if we did the Mansard thing, it'd be about $100,000, including markups after the fact. So you can see the 26,333, then the 26,233. So the only reason I'm calling that out is just so that, you know, match a number with a set of data, you know, match the next number with the data plus an email to kind of step it down. So basically at this point, not changing the square footage or layout of the building in any way. You know, we've talked about doing VE to the tune of about $1.5 million, okay, which is not an insignificant amount of money. And, you know, we can talk about how to, you know, let folks at town meeting know that, but I think this is a number that, you know, the project team is comfortable with at this point, to be able to move and, you know, kind of reduce the ask. Now, there was one additional step, okay, and again, I'm going to show you, but it's, again, we heard that nobody wants to go this way, and there could be an issue with the petition that was put forward by the citizens, because this is what the result would be if you took another 1,100 square feet out of the building. Basically, the difference between this number and this number is 1,164 square feet of the building at $400 a square foot. Okay, there was some discussions with Fontaine, you know, maybe 250, 300. I thought that was low. 500 is kind of too high. Somewhere in that range, you're never going to get, as we've talked about, dollar for dollar. You know, you're like, wait a minute, if I do the math, this is an $800 a square foot building for construction or whatever the number is. Right. And by just taking 1,000 square feet out, you don't get that at $800 a square foot. You get it at some strongly discounted amount, because, you know, you're not reducing really any exterior walls. You're not reducing the amount of windows. You're not reducing the size of the HVAC units. So the square footage, you're not getting a dollar for dollar. So, you know, carrying $400 a square foot times the 1,164 gets you the delta here of about, you know, at the end of the day, you know, with markups, about another $500,000 total. So again, this is what, you know, I heard from the committee last time. Nope, we don't want to consider that. Let's go back. So we've basically got VE, which saves you $1.5 million. Square foot reduction to not impact the MBLC grant would only net you, you know, about another 500,000. And again, they weren't happy with this, but again, technically speaking, we could probably still do it. However, how does that impact the citizens petition and all of that? So this one's easy. In my mind, this number is easy. This is easy VE. We go back to the town, we tell them we did it, we can change it. You know, even the building that was brought back by petition, this is just the VE process starting. Well, if someone says, and I know that there were some numbers from some comments from Shelby, well, someone talked about 5, 10, 15, 20%. We aren't saving that amount of money. The only way to save 20% off of this price is to lop off a giant chunk of square footage. And if you do that, you're going to lose the grant. Okay, so we're going to do this where we can. And then moving forward, you know, we're VEing a design that's only 20% complete. So all we can do beyond this is commit to the citizens that we will continue to be good stewards moving forward, work with Fontaine, work with LPA to design cost-effective measures kind of throughout. So I've thrown a ton of stuff at you. I see hands popping up, and I'll turn it back to Ed.
Okay, Lee, go ahead.
I just wondered, what would the 1,000 square feet be, John? What would be reduced?
Well, that was the discussion, Lee, about the possible open second floor room that has, you know, that could be made into a 3-season, could be even made into a 4-season room that had, you know, windows that could open, but it would be that that face of the building, basically taking a slice off of that right side of the building.
Okay.
That's what was reviewed with, that was reviewed with MBLC, with LPA. And
Thank you.
Maureen.
And
Walter,
also, just to clarify, that also included the, most of that covered porch along the Parkman Street facade at
Okay.
the main level. So it wasn't just the children's area, it was also that porch area. It was
Thank
just
you.
Walter. Yeah,
Just wanted to add that when you include borrowing costs, that $1 million savings saves about another 600K. So your 1.5 would actually save in the total taxpayers more over 2.
Good point.
Actually almost 2.5, but I think, but
Over time, yeah.
over the whole time. Yeah.
Pete, you had your hand up for a minute.
I was asking, I think the same question as Lee, is that the same space we had talked about at the last meeting in column K? It seems the answer is yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to include it. We had talked about it kind of big picture. I hadn't shown you the number, even though, the way when I had an earlier conversation today about this, the way I look at this column is, I heard that we don't want to go down this road. So I'm graying it out. But I guess, as we talked about, and as I saw Maureen's slides that are being prepared, this kind of green column is what we had, kind of prepared to show them kind of the high level summaries of the sections of the budget, the total less the grant. Here's kind of the impact. Now what we would be doing is, if the committee was in favor, is substituting those numbers, or not substituting, but somehow figuring out, obviously trying, I guess the process would be to make an amendment to this. And again, it's citizens petition. How do we do that? Again, we're not changing the footprint or the building that was presented, just some of the construction components of that building. This is not the same as the grayed out column. The grayed out column is changing the size and shape of the building by removing square footage. The blue column here is a VE of building components.
So if I could just add to my previous comments, I was actually in favor of the option of taking out the 1,100 square feet at the last meeting. And I had recalled that the number was significantly more than what's being discussed here of $500,000. I thought it was well over $1 million associated with that 1,100 square feet.
We actually thought, Pete, that the square footage might have been more. But when we looked back at it and I questioned with LPA, it is only, there was for a brief time, there was a possibility that it was going to go up to, it was more square footage. That was incorrect. That's on me. We were never going to go higher though than that $400 to $500 a square feet. So 500 times 2,000 square feet, which is where we thought could possibly come in. There's the $1 million. But that's not where we are, unfortunately.
Okay.
Lee, you've got your hand up?
Yes, thank you. You're characterizing us as not being in favor of that reduction, John. I'm not sure that we voted and really, all chimed in specifically on that. I'm personally not opposed to it. I'm not saying we should do it, but I think if we want to be able to say to the townspeople, we listened, we heard what you're saying, we've heard your concerns, and these are the things we know we can do. And then this is another possibility that could diminish, the cost more, and something that we could consider here on the floor. I think we need to have that conversation, whether we want to do that or not. If it saves the project, for me, is kind of a no-brainer. But anyway, that's where I stand on that.
Maureen, you've got your hand up.
I don't think this is something that we can do on the floor. I don't think we can go to the town meeting with a mindset of, here, voters, you can have this project or this one or this one. Like, you get to pick one. I think we have to go as the building committee with, here is the project and this is what we're voting on and here's the justification for the cost. I think I think we're going to open a huge can of worms if we position it as, here you can pick whether you want to cut the porch off or if you want us to keep it.
Keep it simple.
Bob,
Yeah, it's funny. I was agreeing with Lee in a sense that I didn't think we actually said no to reducing a bigger piece, but I think it was the consensus that because the citizens petition was looking at X, we should bring up X. And I'm all in favor of the light blue because we're showing we're squeezing out some more of those inefficiencies without changing the footprint or changing the project much. And then I agree with Maureen. I'm thinking if we ever went with the gray, talking about lopping off another 1,100 square feet to save another 500,000 or whatever, I think you're opening up everything again, the can of worms. I think the vultures are going to just come right out. I don't mean vultures, but I mean, everyone's going to come out and say, oh, well, then why don't you lop off the third floor? Why don't you lop off this? And all of a sudden, it's just going to be a big mess. And so I think we should keep it to this is the building. We did squeeze out some inefficiencies for about $1.5 million with the cladding, but it doesn't change the overall square footage. If the building is the building we presented. So I think I agree with what Maureen just said.
I have a technical question rather than a strategic question. Are any of y'all familiar with the Northborough Library? The reason I ask is they did something with copper cladding, I'm guessing 10 or so years ago. I don't know the exact dates. And it got the patina of age in about a year, so that instead of looking like coppery, it looks it looks green. And it actually looks nice to me, but I think there was some shock in Northborough about that. So I guess my question is do you know if that would happen with the kind of copper we had been talking about?
No, you can pre-patina natural copper. They do a chemical treatment, and you can either get like just a slight patina, or you can go full bore like Northborough. So it looks like it's been there for hundreds of years. It is pretty, it is highly visible in Northborough. It's much more patina than I think we would probably want to go. The other thing is you can get painted finishes that kind of replicate patinaed copper. Most of the ones I've seen are more toward the Northborough end of the finish, so they're brighter, they're more that greenish color. I don't think we'd want to go in that direction. So
Okay. So we have, I think, at least two questions to talk through here. One is, do we want to, I'll say lead with the value engineering that John has described to us. I've heard a lot of people say that they have no problem with that, and I want to point out that it's minor aesthetic changes, a noticeable cost change, and no change to programming or function, is my understanding. So go ahead, Walter. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a nice idea. It's without giving up size and scope of the project. They picked areas that I think would not influence the quality of life inside the library, and coming back with at least with a good change like that is helpful. It's not $5 million, but it's a real number, and it I think it someone said spoke to listening to comments or something like that. So
okay, so I'm seeing a lot of nods and thumbs up. Does anybody object to that? And do we need a vote at this point, or is this just, let me take a step sideways. So just to confirm what I believe the strategy is, the article in the petition is the article is the article, except that we can verbally change the article and put up a different motion on the screen to actually be voted on. So that's what we would be doing. It would be just the same article, but with the roughly $1.5 million fewer dollars on it. Okay, Lee, you have your hand up.
Yes, I almost forgot what I was going to say. You can always ask for less.
Yeah,
And yes, I think we should go with that. Something else, it'll come back to me. Oh, I
Okay.
do think we need to vote on it because it is a change in the budget we're presenting. So I think we do need a vote. I don't know. What do you think, Maureen?
I think it's probably a good thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And are we voting to recommend to the trustees to do this? Or is the library building committee the proponent?
Good question.
That is a good question.
Do they have to be the ones, perhaps?
I
Can
don't
I
know.
chime in? Go ahead.
Yes.
Can I chime in? It has to be the building committee. The trustees can't do it.
Oh,
Because
okay.
the trustees represent everybody, not just the proponents. So because of that, the trustees really can't be the ones to do it. Just like the school committee wouldn't be the ones to, propose things. It would be like the school department, the superintendent, things like that. And so the trustees, I don't think are appropriate to do it. Just my 2 cents, just a thought.
So that's Carolyn Spring speaking,
Yes.
just for the record.
Yep. No, that's okay.
Okay. And also for the record, Carolyn is one of the library trustees, but not a building committee member.
So
Okay.
I
my
don't think the trustees are the ones to do it.
And that's a really good point, because if it was a school project, the recommendation would come from the school building committee, not the school committee. So that makes perfect sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah, but in the school scenario, the town has empowered the school building committee to be the contracting entity. So when we work in Westborough, we are working for the Westborough Pre-K to 3 building committee. That's who signs everything. On this project, that's similar similarly, the trustees are signing those agreements. So the town has, again, not a lawyer, engineer, the town has said that it's the library trustees, Mary signs the contracts, kind of all of that. So I don't know if school's the right example here, because you're saying the library building committee makes recommendations to the trustees. The trustees are essentially the owner. Again, a little different in town meeting. So it's, good questions for a town council of who should make the recommendation. I mean, I think certainly leave here with an understanding that if this entity as the building committee supports it, great, get it on record. And then we'll figure out, is that a recommendation? Like who's going to stand up and say at town meeting, is it going to be a member of the building committee or a member of, the trustees who are making the edit?
Yeah, and I guess my opinion is I don't think it should be the trustees, just because for the same reason that the schools don't do the school committee doesn't do it. I get what you're saying about the contracting entity, but that's different than the proponent.
But I think it's the trustees that are technically the owner of the project.
I actually don't know. How's that?
That's
It might be the
something-
town.
Yeah.
I don't
Then
know
I
the
think
answer.
The library building committee.
That's something that should be found out.
I think the library building committee, to cover all bases and not require another meeting, should vote and have that motion be either a recommendation to the trustees or either or. And this way we cover both and we don't need to come back with another one. And then we'll check with town council for verification. And if we don't need it, great. And if we do, then we move forward with it.
So I would like to make a motion that the library building committee changes our proposed budget to the where's the total here on the screen? 35,161,877, as shown in the 102522 CM estimate plus screening. And further recommend to the library trustees that they support that.
I'll second that.
Second that.
Okay, so let's have a vote. Any more discussion? Okay, hearing none. Walter?
Leslie, yes.
Ed Baldwin, yes. Maureen?
Amy Ott, yes.
Lee?
Emery, yes.
Al?
Gordon, yes.
Pete?
Dunbeck, yes.
Mary?
Johnston, yes.
Bob?
Petrozelli, yes.
And I believe that is all of the building committee members who are present. Did I miss anyone? Okay, good. Okay, so the next question, this I think will be harder, is to decide how to address, what, if anything, to say at the town meeting about the potential additional cost reduction by taking out some square footage.
I think we just keep it in our back pocket. I didn't mean to bring it up as an option, but if we end up with them saying, we want you to cut another somebody makes a motion, wants you to cut up another 500,000, I guess there'd be a vote on that. We wouldn't have to say how we do it, or maybe we would, but I think it's important for us to have that in our back pocket for a while.
I think it's too complicated. I don't think people coming to this town meeting are going to vote in favor or against based on that additional $500,000. And I don't see how you, I'm sure someone could make a motion to reduce it, but then it's just their motion to reduce the amount. So I think you got to pick a horse and ride it. This makes sense in the fact that the petitioners requested a new vote. They didn't request you to make the building smaller, I think, at the time. I really think you overcomplicate it. It doesn't work. So I would just go with this number and see where you get.
Being a horsewoman, I like your analogy, and I will yield to you, Walter.
I think the 500,000 or so is not enough to make a difference. And if somebody just sort of stands up spontaneously on the floor and moves a lower number, it's going to be a much bigger drop than that. It'll be 5 million or 10 million or something, which just would not, which would cost us the grant. So
is there? I agree with that comment that a motion from the floor would be a much larger number. Is there a statement we should be prepared to make that said Mass Library Building Directors, whatever the committee is, MDLC, will only allow a reduction of non-program space, and we estimate that to be less than $500,000 saving, or some sort of a declarative statement that says that's the line. So we'd be prepared with that answer if such a motion comes from the floor.
I think I was going to suggest something along those lines. So I agree with that. We looked into potential for reducing the space and found that we could reduce it by roughly 1,100 square feet by taking out these two porch things, but it would only give us a cost reduction of $500,000. And in the opinion of the building committee, it just wasn't worth it.
Sounds good.
And that's an answer to a question from the floor, not something we'd initiate.
Correct. That's my thought.
Yep.
And we can also point out some of that the things that would go away add, we believe, real value to the library in terms of, a unique space, place that residents and patrons will enjoy. And Maureen, I'm sure you can do a better job at that than I can. Walter, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I don't remember, but it is one of our frequently answered questions. Just, why can't you make it smaller or something like that? And you could say it's limited to that. You don't have to put in the dollar values per se, but I don't remember. Maybe it was already in there.
I don't think it
don't
is,
know.
but I can definitely add it, Walter.
Yeah, because because we already started slightly smaller, I think in this design from the original proposal, I think we're limited to even less than what would have been the exactly 5%, if I recall. So
Yeah.
it seems fair.
So do we need a motion on that, or since we're sort of deciding not to do anything, can we just let it go that way?
It's an inaction, so you don't need a motion.
That was kind of what I was thinking. Okay. We're not moving, so we don't need a motion. Okay. But we are in agreement. Well, I want to restate this one more time. We're going to have a slide and some information prepared as backup that will describe the potential reduction in square footage, the cost savings that would get us, and the reasons we don't recommend it.
Yes.
Okay, great. Any other discussion on the cost reduction initiatives that John presented?
I think you did a great job. Thank you.
And we're going to have some of that built into the presentation, I assume. Right.
I will have a suggestion. This might be for John, I'm not sure, but the question may come up, well, why didn't you get that cost reduction the first time?
We talked about that. And I guess the way you could probably easily get around it is it's not that, as an example with the panels, we were looking at a more traditional, exterior cladding for the building, along, maybe, I don't know the best way to say it, and decided that a more practical approach was necessary to try to save dollars. And this is the example of the kind of things we'll be looking at moving forward. I think that's as close as you can get to it is, again, everyone has to remember that this design is at 20%. There's a lot of work left to do. Now, again, we're not going to squeeze millions out of it moving forward, but we heard the town, we heard what's being said. So and that's why we brought a CM on board as well, so that they can work with us as this design, with an approved vote, as we move into design development, start looking at those things right away. Hey, Eric thinks we should look at this, or LPA thinks we should look at this. Fontaine has some ideas. We decide on something different. Like the process then is going to kind of be ongoing. Further VE, if you get to that DD phase and everyone does their estimates, and now the numbers, that construction number is 26,233. The minute that number comes in $1 over 26,233, we got to do VE anyway, because we have to hold that number under the 26,233 all the way through the rest of the project now. And again, we're used to doing that, but we will also, we don't want to just do reactive VE. We want to do proactive where we can, and that's part of the collaborative nature of having the CM on board.
Good.
And I think it's important to let the townspeople know that value engineering will continue throughout the project. So the example of the, reducing it by the cladding by that 1.5 million will continue without any change to the programming. And that's the reason we have it CM at risk. They'll be doing it throughout, and we may pick up savings. But I have a feeling that because these savings, if they do it, may offset the higher costs of materials in the next couple of years. That probably will happen. But I think it gives the town, knowing that this isn't just a figure, that we're going to be working diligently throughout the project to, as I said, value engineer where we can.
And my point was that I think exactly like we might have come to this decision a year from now, and we aren't obligated to spend the full amount anyway. And we might have likely said, oh, if we switch this material, we can save, $500,000 here or something. And we probably would have said, go for it. So it's just doing some of that work earlier, because I think that's a justification too.
Okay, John.
The only other question I wanted to put out there, guys, when we talk about that sheet, is there had been discussion about fundraising and who and what and how much and when. And even if the number is a soft number or a soft target, I think it's important from our experience on other projects. If you think that the Friends group or whatever that entity can raise, if we think it's $1 million, you show it on the screen.
Yep.
Because, you know, again, you have to vote the big number, but that was a number of questions of feedback that came from Shelby. There were some questions a little bit, maybe I recall a comment or two at town meeting, or at least since town meeting. I think if we were to, you know, as an example, just let me grab this. You know, if we were to put, potential fundraising,
And John, the Library Foundation did make a commitment to raise $1 million. So
Good.
that's an accurate number.
Good.
Maureen, will they be willing to stand up and say that in the town meeting?
That's what I'm going to ask them. I saw Maureen Johnson on Saturday at the 5K, and I asked her if I could have a moment sometime this week. I have not heard from her yet, but
Okay.
I'll see if I can get a commitment from her or from Jim Ball, who is the co-chair of the foundation, to stand up and say that.
Okay. Katie.
I just wanted to restate something that Eric pointed out about the value engineering that's somewhat of a nuance, but I think is important. And that is that the copper material has seen this huge spike in cost recently. And so that's a perfect example of things that we as a team will be keeping an eye on as the design progresses. And this is something that all of us in this business right now are experiencing. It's not that it was copper was the Taj Mahal material, and now we're doing something lesser than. And the second big one that was brought up was the constructability analysis, which is about that screen at the HVAC system. And that is part of our process. It's an example of it. It's not about reducing program. It's not that we had extra. I think Brian had mentioned this at one time. You run the danger of saying, we've already taken out $1.5 million, and people reacting by saying, well, that just shows you had way too much in there to begin with, and it was an expensive project. So the frame of that, I think, is important.
That's
Very
great.
important.
Thank you. Pete. You're on mute.
Nitpicking maybe, but in column H, which was the original TM number, it did not include the $1 million fundraising. So I think you could actually show a $2.5 million improvement in the number by taking that out of that arithmetic.
A little unfair.
Well, we got voted down at 27.3, and now we're coming back with a different number.
Yeah.
And we're explaining-
But I think we alluded to doing fundraising anyway.
We did, but nobody said, nobody mentioned the figure $1 million.
Yeah.
If the foundation will stand up and say $1 million, then I think we can
and
put
to
that in the
Walter's,
presentation.
and Walter's point, maybe we do the column J without the $1 million, and then do a second column, which is, and in addition, we have the foundation pledging to raise $1 million and distinguish those numbers.
Because
I
that's
just think-
new.
I think the baseline is H is 27,300.
So I guess the question is, if to not confuse folks.
It's confusing not to have that million in the first estimate. You're right.
Well, my question is this, Walter, is if right off the bat, Maureen is going to say, or somebody is going to stand up and say, committee supports the VE, that 36.7 from last time becomes 35.1. That 35.1 is what is in the rest of the presentation. The 36.7 is gone. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm showing you this screen so that you guys can understand what we had versus where we are. in a perfect world, this column goes away. There is no comparison to last time. It's here's where we are, and we can tell them that we're now $2.5 million less because of VE and now a commitment on fundraising. But again, you're still only voting a number that is, $1.5 million lower. The rest is just less money you're going to have to borrow. So, in my opinion, if that proposal is made and accepted and we change the number from 36.7 to 35.1, that old, whatever we would have presented at the last town meeting, again, they didn't see these numbers at the last town meeting. So that's what we're adding to the presentation. There's no reason to show them the old ones, I guess, to not confuse folks, to say what it was. We can allude to it, we can mention what it was, but I think to have comparison columns, that's probably, that's too much info.
I'm not sure it's too much info. There are a couple of people I'd like to ask about that look at things like this, see what they think.
But let's put that on, push that back. We have a couple other topics to discuss as we go through here. Now, I'm looking at the points Shelby Marshall raised in her email. Now, and just for people who may not know, Shelby is one of the select board. She's been hearing a lot of comments from residents and took the time to write us a big email summarizing her comments and what she thought we could do about them. So I'm just looking at there's the questions on fundraising. I believe we've answered with our discussion of the foundation just now. There's questions on project costs and what have we done to try and bring the cost down? And I think we've answered that by the discussion we've just had also. Tell you the truth, I think we have, by looking at these, I think we've handled most of her points. Do we want to go through them one by one? And
I think the biggest point, Ed, is that when we talk about the only comment I have about the VE is that I think we need to do much like we had to respond with a question to a question with an answer, the one I answered about the VE and the process, we may want to incorporate into the presentation, however briefly, an acknowledgement of that process to at least break the ice, to let people know. So it doesn't have to be a question to be asked. I mean, again, I know we're limited for time, but is this, I think we had some commentary on this our last meeting, letting folks know that we're building, we started with a program, the program drove a square footage, the square footage drove a budget. The budget has had some value engineering. We have hired a CM so that as we move through the other 80% of the design, we will continue to check, both from a cost and a constructability standpoint, the progress of those drawings and how it's going, and working in concert with our CM. And then we're going to estimate this thing 2 or 3 more times moving forward to make sure that we're staying on budget. I think that addresses, I think, a big part of the concern in Shelby's, in Shelby's bullet points. And I think we should, I think making that more of a upfront piece of the presentation may be better than just a reactive, again, along the point of, we heard you, we know you're concerned about this, but we're going to remind you kind of right out the gate.
Okay. Lee, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, one of the big points that came up several times at the town meeting was this misperception that we wouldn't be able to keep the cost where it is, that we didn't have a budget, that it could escalate. And I don't think we very clearly or emphatically explained how it can't escalate. So that feeds into what you're talking about right now, that we have these mechanisms. We can't go over budget. And this is how we prevent ourselves from going over budget.
Yep. It occurs to me, maybe something you put in the FAQ or this call it an objection handler or something, is you don't have a budget. And to my mind, the answer is if you vote yes, the number you vote yes to, if the town votes yes for this project, and the number they vote yes for is the budget.
Very good.
So,
It's also important to note that this is essentially the same process that the town
Yeah.
went through with the Fail School and the Gibbon School. You know,
And-
you program divides square footage drives, you know, cost. And that's the same process we went through here, just it wasn't with the MSBA, it was with the MBLC. And now we have to live with it, just like you do with the schools. And
Yep.
then you have to live with it for the remainder of the project.
And in the past 3 of those projects, all 3 of them were, and they were done with Vertex, I believe. All 3 of them came in under budget. So,
Yep. Fails, Hastings, and Armstrong all stayed within their budgets.
That's good. Then we need to say that too.
oh yeah, I think that's in the FAQ now. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm going to just a fact check on that. We know that Hastings went over because they needed to do ADA. I think add ADA to the air conditioning. Is that something y'all were involved with, or is that a separate chunk project?
That was a school department. They brought that on and we actually don't even know some of the details of it. So it wasn't
Okay.
something that we're involved with.
So independent
Yeah, we
review.
did
Okay, good.
we did the Hastings, the pre-K building.
Right.
Not
Right, yeah.
not the work on the any work on the actual school itself. School.
The
Original school.
the Hastings repairs are done ad hoc.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Another reason.
It's
not
still
to
are.
ad
It
hoc
still
repairs.
will be. It's still going on.
Okay,
In Armstrong, we did the removal of the temp classroom and the connector wing that basically closed the
Yeah.
square. In there, that was a couple $2-3 million job.
okay. Let's see. Any other thoughts or comments on Shelby's email? Did all of you get it? Just to check it. I think we
Mhm.
just streamed that to,
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts or comments on that?
I have a thought or a comment, but I'm not sure if it's exactly because of what Shelby sent. I have heard from Shelby that and I'm not sure if it's just her or the whole board of selectmen, but you know, they're meeting tonight, that they're worried about the precedent that we're setting. Now, I'm sorry. I don't know why it's doing that. They're worried about the precedent we're setting by having this extra, you know, the special town meeting. And I reminded some people that this is how my answer to that is this is how a democracy works. You have 550 people who petitioned the Board of Selectmen saying they weren't happy with the outcome of the last town meeting. It's within our right in a democracy and the town meeting government for citizens to say we weren't happy, we'd like to rethink this. That this project, which we didn't bring up very strongly at the other town meeting, was approved by 3 prior town meetings. Then at a 4th meeting with a margin of a dozen or more people, 3 years of town meeting decisions was turned around. So we have more people petitioning to rethink this than actually attended that meeting. 550 people. It's unprecedented. You want to talk about precedent? We've never had 550 people complain about how a town meeting was run. And we still have out in the background there, the whole question about whether or not it was appropriate for abutters to speak about the project and to vote on it. And that's maybe something we don't want to discuss right now, but that is still out there. So I think that we should feel very comfortable for anybody who asks us about, are we worried about the president? Just saying, this is how democracies work. We have a town meeting government, and this is how it works. So let's support the democratic choices that we have. And however the meeting comes out is how it will come out by who attends. But I think we have to be very comfortable about that. I don't want people making me feel like, you know, oh, this is so scary as a precedent. There was one other thing about that will come back to me.
I would say.
Oh, being held hostage. We're being held hostage. Just let me finish before I forget. They were being held hostage by this $9 million grant. No, we're not being held hostage by that. We're being held to a commitment that 3 different town meetings made. And we're a building committee that is following that commitment. So we're not being held hostage by one thing. We're following the direction of our voters. Thank you.
I will say, with regard to precedent, the state set the precedent when they wrote the law. That's not something we're doing.
Very
So,
good. Thank you. Add that.
Bob.
Sure. I mean, isn't this John Arnold's responsibility at the opening of the meeting to explain? I mean, why, I don't think we should be on the defensive saying why
No.
500. I think it's
And
John
he
just
is,
take care of that right up front. We're not a part of it, you know?
I'm not saying we should address it.
Mhm.
I'm just saying we should feel comfortable. And if people
Oh,
speak
sure.
to us individually to say, no, I'm perfectly comfortable with this. And I think your point is a very good one, Bob, that John Arnold should address it.
Mhm. Okay.
Thank you.
yeah. Go ahead, Maureen.
I just wanted to add that what Lee said is also a great response to the people who raise my blood pressure every time they say that you just want another bite at the apple. You're just sour grapes. I think that captures it exactly. So thank you for that, Lee.
Oh, you're welcome,
did-
Maureen.
and-
This has
and
been
did-
keeping me up at night. And I'm sure it's been keeping many of you up at night too, but boy, your mind is always running around.
And didn't we vote as a committee not to go back? It was like, let the citizens petition take its course. We voted to stay out of that. If it happens,
Exactly.
it happens.
Very
We
good.
did.
I had one person stopped me on the street and said, "Oh, we're having another meeting." And it wasn't like you're getting a second bite of the apple. They go, there goes, they said, this is going to cost $30,000 to hold this meeting. I said, I don't know what the cost is, but you know, it says, talk to the 550 people that want your neighbors, talk to them, don't tell me. But I'm not sure how much it costs to have another meeting.
I
The
I have that information, and I was just at a meeting today with Christy, and they've ordered 1,000 clickers, and she said the cost for that is about $14,000. So
And there was a
that's
point where they were talking about 2,000, which
Yeah.
would have been a lot
double
more,
that.
which seemed very high, but
2,000 I think is excessive. I don't think we will get 2,000
Okay.
people there. I'm not sure we'll get 1,000 people there, but
I understand the plan is that overflow in the gym would have a secret ballot, not electrically. So, but, and that money we have to vote to take out of AFC reserve. No, wait a minute, that's for the Springtown meeting. We're short on money for that too. Sorry. It's also happening at the same AFC meeting next 2 weeks. But there are other additional costs, but that's probably the biggest one.
Okay.
I want to make
Any
sure we
other-
don't, I just
Sorry,
want to
go
make
ahead,
sure
Lou.
we don't lose track of what you were saying. I've forgotten if it was Walter who brought it up, but the 1.5 mil, how much it saves us in the interest cost, that should be on a slide somewhere, because remember, they keep bringing that up. You're not revealing the entire cost because there's the interest. So in case that comes up, that we have that additional saving somewhere. And I'm not sure if we said we would.
Yeah.
Don't know if that's shared or not. I'm
Yep,
sharing the
it
wrong
did.
screen.
I'm
Are you seeing my
your
dog or are
spreadsheet.
you?
no,
Oh,
we're
you
seeing
see
the
the
spreadsheet.
Okay, because it's over there. Okay. Anyway, I did so sorry, but one thing that we sent out in an email today anyway is Leah's latest numbers from her expert is in 2026 you should be using an estimate of 4.5% instead of 4%, so that the numbers went up. So this is the original cost of the project. I just, while we were sitting here chatting, I put in the new cost of the project, and I can't do a quick comparison for you, but you can see the average one goes down. The interest over the life of the loan goes down to 12 million from 12.9. And then if you could get $1 million in fundraising, I did it easily by just throwing in to that.
Mhm.
And now you're at 11.7. So in
Good.
interest rate, you're saving over $1 million in interest by
Well, it's good to have
taking
that.
out that kind of money.
So my question about that, and Walter answered this in an email,
Yeah.
but I'm still not sure.
So
We've been talking all along about, we're not gonna borrow the full amount in
It's-
year one, that we would only be borrowing what we need.
So the confusion is this year one is year one of a consolidated, I'm going out to do a long-term buy. So it's just sort of like a house mortgage, sort of, where you don't get the final, if you're in construction versus not. So the town generally borrows small, short-term notes as they're doing the construction only on what we need. So this is really fiscal like 26 or 27, when they finally go out and say, okay, now we need the money. So you would be at that point pretty much borrowing the full amount less the fundraising and the loan. So this isn't next year that all of a sudden that $303 in this chart shows up. This is in your fiscal probably 27 taxes. And at least that's the way, and Lee is the expert at this, but that's the way it was explained to us, that we just borrow what we need as we go, short-term loans, and then eventually you pull those together because of fiscal policies into a basically a major borrow.
Right, and the year one piece is that, to your point, that year one is when you finally borrow. Because as an example, you're going to get, as we talked about a little bit on the last call, you know, with a yes vote and the paperwork to the MBLC, you're going to get your first check for 1.8 million. So we're going to be able to put that in an account and live off of that through the design. And then the drawings get approved and they're going to send you the next 1.8 million. So you're really not even going to, I mean, you need to borrow in preparation for construction start somewhere in there. But, you know, the first 3.6 million or so of the project will fund the up and running of the project. So that year one, to Walter's point, might not be until the middle of, you know, 2024, you know, later 2024. So it's, you know.
Right, and so the year one in this chart is not trying to say construction year one. This is like just looking at a loan year one, which is
when you
again,
when you finally
3 or 4
borrow.
years from now.
Yep.
I can say I put together a spreadsheet much like Walter's and actually tried splitting the loan into two parts. You know, figuring like 2/3 of it would come in the first year of construction and the rest would come in the last. And if you keep the interest rate constant, it just doesn't matter. You get a little bit of your first payment's a little lower, and then you have an extra payment on the far end, and that it's not to my mind. And if anyone really wants to, I can send off the spreadsheets. It just doesn't. It's not worth worrying about. Lee, you've got your hand up. Oh, sorry. Go. Well, I'll try to cut
I
you
was just
off.
gonna say, the short-term loans might be less higher interest rates right now because there's an expectation that they're going up. So not a shorter loan might be less. I don't know how that works, but
Lee.
I think it's important to have this as a slide to answer a question about how is this going to affect my tax bill, you know, over the period of the project. Because I think a lot of people that were worried about it were worried that it meant their taxes are going to go up at their next tax bill. Yeah, but this isn't how that's working. It's going to be several years before we really feel that impact. And to have that information might be a calming, you know, reassurance. I don't know, but I think we should think about that, not to present it right up front, maybe because it is kind of complicated. But I don't think we explained it really well last time. You know, when are you going to feel the impact? And I think people are worried I'm going to have the impact by Christmas. I'm not going to have enough money to buy my Christmas presents. You know, it's a fear thing.
We've made graphs that show that they're pretty simple, and we can put in the assumption that the payments start in 2025 or 2026 or whatever the accurate thing is, if we think that'll be helpful.
I think that's a very good point you brought up, because people are, again, neighbors that I hear from, oh, my taxes are going up. Well, you know what? You're not gonna. You won't see that for a few years, and by that time, your house will be valued $200,000 higher, anyways.
It's true.
When you sell it, because you're planning on moving. I know you are.
The one thing that I think we want to be very confident of is that when we put numbers up that that the finance director will will agree with or will support. So Maureen, let me ask you to, and I think it shouldn't be any particular amount of work for her or for us, whatever, to put together a spreadsheet where you just plug in a couple of assumptions and you get your numbers. So I'm wondering if you can come up, if you can get some agreement with Leah to review them right before town meeting or check on them, whatever our final numbers are.
I think that's what Walter just showed us, because that came
Well,
from her.
This is her spreadsheet, but if you
Okay.
wanted to change, have her give her some more information or ask her to run the numbers with these assumptions, then that would be fair, right?
I think I definitely don't want her feeling left out of the process.
And further, maybe get her opinion of when, what fiscal year taxes she thinks these would start.
I think that might be, she'd come back and ask probably Vertex for their best guess at what the payment schedule would be. So maybe John can put that together, but I think it's gonna, let's see, 23 to design it and 24 to 25, construction is 24 to 25.
Let me give you, so basically the MBLC milestones are listed. Oftentimes you can do better than what they say, because a lot of times it was this time and the next fiscal year, meaning they only want to make one payment a year. But Brian and I have experience on 2 projects where we got them earlier, both of them. They're like, just ask. Okay, we'll ask. So I'm going to give you I'll give you the conservative estimate of what I think of, based on what we know. And if we can do better than that, great.
Okay, so you'll get that to Maureen offline?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, great, thank you.
Your fiscal, you just click fiscal year for Westborough is June
July
30th, July 1st.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, we're already in fiscal 23. So that's why when you start talking about 2026 is probably fiscal 27. So.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any other comments about loans and financing and interest and so on? Okay. Let's see. Pete sent 2 emails, one with information about tax laws.
It's interesting.
For energy efficient commercial buildings. John and LPA and that side part of the project team, have y'all seen those?
Yes, we have.
Okay. Would those tax breaks apply to you as the people building the things? And by you,
They would. The 179D is a tax deduction that, in the case of federal, state, or federal, state, or local government property, it's a deduction that may be taken by the designer. And we've done this before on Shrewsbury Library or other school projects, and it's based on the square footage of the building. Right now, I think the potential deduction is on $1.80 or $1.88 per square foot. But I understand, and I think Pete noted too that in the future that may go up to $5. It hasn't happened yet, but there's potential for that to happen. It's something that we have to pay it's not free money. We have to pay our designers, our consulting engineers to design things to a level that will qualify for the tax deduction. We also have to pay a tax consultant to prepare the submission for us. So, things like energy modeling and that type of thing. So it's not low-hanging fruit, so to speak. Katie, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, not at the moment.
Okay. Any other thoughts about that from the rest of the group?
Yeah, we do not have, as the OPM, a connection to that, and unfortunately, nor do you as the owner.
Yes.
So
Okay.
what will typically happen though is we will see all sorts of contractors and stuff try to, hey, could you sign this? Like, no, we're not signing this. You know, it is something that's out there. Unfortunately, we are not beneficiaries of that.
My reason for raising it was, as I understood it, which is very limited, as a commercial for-profit company, the benefits would accrue to the tax-paying for-profit company, and that the nonprofit or the government entity, there's this alternative benefit which accrues to the developer, professional services companies, designer in particular. And it would seem to me that that should be if that changes from $1.80 per square foot to $5 per square foot, and we were a commercial enterprise, that benefit would accrue to us. So I'm not sure why it wouldn't accrue to the town in this case through a concession on the fees associated with the taxes you would normally pay and I'm totally understanding you have to pay your designers and stuff. So it's not a dollar for dollar thing. And I don't want to, I'm no expert at tax thing. I just stumbled across this and I just wanted to share it. So that's the end of my comments, I guess.
Bob?
Yeah, at first I thought, well, why is the town getting it, the public owner getting this money? But it was explained very, very good, very well. And it sounded like that the designer will have, in order to get this extra rebate or the tax credit, it's not a one-for-one. They're going to have to put in extra energy and extra payroll costs to design to these new standards. So they get the tax credit for it. So it was, to me, I'm happy with the explanation.
You know, I would just add, there are other incentive rebates related to energy efficiency from some of the utilities, National Grid, for instance, that we will be pursuing on behalf of the owner, and those will go directly to the owner. Those are not something that we participate in. Any rebates go to the town in that case.
Okay.
What is the order? Oh, I'm sorry, what is the order of that? Is it in hundreds of thousands or a few thousands? You know, I mean, that's not the same as adding another $1 million because a line item like we did with fundraising, is it?
I wish I could say it was more, but it's probably, you know, in the $100,000 plus category. I were to guess, that's what I would say. And I don't know for sure because some of the category, you know, line item categories are in flux right now. They're increasing based on certain technologies.
No problem. Thank you.
Lee.
Maybe we include that information though, when we say that this is why we can't go over budget and these are the mechanisms we use throughout the project. And the value engineering will continue to go on, and that, you know, our experts will be looking for energy saving incentives that would potentially take a significant amount of money or a fair amount of money out, just that it's in that. They know that we're constantly looking for ways as the project goes ahead to save the town money. Katie's nodding her head.
Go ahead, Katie.
Oh, well said. I think the only thing that Eric didn't really maybe fully flesh out is the level of design that is required of us to meet the Climate Act, to meet Westborough's, you know, net zero goals is really significant. It's a much heavier lift than it was, you know, even 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. And so that is part of the design that we are providing for you. And the incentive does go hand in hand with that, but without that, there probably would be a higher fee that would be required to cover our costs for the level of effort that goes into designing, especially public buildings right now.
Any other comments on that topic? Pete, you also sent over some information on the maintenance classification that the DPW uses.
That's just kind of slide advice to Maureen in regard to how to explain the Plan B of how of the deferred projects and stuff. I thought the structure Chris Payant had was useful in my thinking, and I was just sharing it, not for really committee discussion. If Maureen finds it useful, adopt it. If not, it was just passing it along.
Does Walter or anyone, do you happen to know what the town's threshold for deciding something as a capital improvement is?
5,000.
5,000 with a useful life of more than 2
20?
years, 2 years, 5 years.
Something
Okay.
like that. But it is the 5,000, yeah.
So,
then the
so
useful life.
any of these repairs we're talking about are way into the, even if we were to try and do them piecemeal individually, anyone would be way over the capital side. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think we've gone through all the topics that people have sent in or mentioned by email. Maureen, do you have anything you want to show us or discuss?
Not today.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, it is getting to be that time. In that case, we guess we need to think about our next meeting. Let me take a step aside. Any other topics that anyone wants to raise? Community member issues? Oh, there's one. The Finance Committee meeting. Walter, you sent out the information when it is, and I don't have it at the top of my head right now.
It will be meeting on December 5th, Monday night, 7 p.m.
Okay.
Next. And tonight at the select board meeting, they'll be closing the warrant and voting on the warrant articles in theory.
Okay.
That's tonight, starting just after 6.
And there will also be a planning board meeting they have to have another
The
public
6th.
hearing on the zoning article that's going to be on Tuesday, the 6th at their regular meeting.
Okay. Maureen, can you send out a list of those at some point,
Yes.
so that because my memory's not going to get it. Lee, you have your hand up.
I'm just wondering how we get other important people at the town meeting to speak up and support our project verbally. The Board of Selectmen, the town manager, people from the senior center, the foundation, which you've already talked about, if the AFC is going to support us or not this time. Because it was people said, well, to me later, well, we didn't hear from the Board of Selectmen, we didn't hear from other people, so we kind of believed what the Finance Committee said, and that's what we went with. I think we need to find out, do we have support that people are willing to verbalize at the town floor, where we're limited to our 10-minute presentation? We need some help. I need to know who's backing us. I'm not exactly sure how to get that. I mean, I could go around asking people, but I think we need to think about that part of our strategy for support.
Any additional comments or thoughts? Walter, do you have any indication that the Finance Committee is going to change their voting pattern?
And I have no indication that someone who voted against it before would vote in favor of it this time. There may be some who voted for it last time that might not, because of the second vote as a possibility. There is the possibility that someone could change their mind. I just don't, it's not an expectation of mine that you'll all of a sudden get the support. And it just doesn't seem likely to me. Most of them had pretty entrenched viewpoints, and so I would expect that the committee won't get the support of the AFC at this one, but you were 5 people who voted the other way short last time, so it's just a recommendation.
Okay. Bob,
I did hear some
comment?
complaints.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, Bob, go ahead. You had your hand up.
It's just a little minor aside. but I ran into Shelby the other morning and she was saying, oh, by the way, I said, I went up to her and I thanked her for sending over all those questions and answers. And I mentioned we'd be discussing them and, having a strategy for addressing them at the meeting. And so she said, well, what are you guys doing about signs? I says, what do you mean signs? She goes, you're going to print signs up and get signs out there to have people vote yes or whatever on, like you see lawn signs before an election. She goes, I have copy for it and I have what you can put on the sign, and I have a printer in Framingham that's, if you want to spend $250, it will get you maybe 25, 50 signs. And then I was kind of like scratching my head. I said, well, this is like a week away, a week and a half. I said, is it us that, would it be the petitioners that are going to be getting the signs? It's not us, really.
So it actually is, Bob. They have ordered signs and they started going out on people's lawns today.
Oh,
I saw one today.
Yeah.
On my street.
With all the things that are going on, I said, this is something that's completely out of the blue, and I didn't expect to hear that we have to go get signs made up. So I said, let me bring it to the group, but I think in the end we both said, yeah, it's not the library building committee.
And as you know, the opposition is doing this. Apparently they also put flyers on the windows of people's windshields at the Congregational Church on Sunday during their church service. So
not signed. You have no idea who they are.
Not signed.
Which I thought was pretty cowardly. I did hear some complaints that the AFC didn't volunteer at our last meeting their thought process. The people who voted for the project and the people who voted against it, and that it is the role of the AFC to explain why they're making decisions. And there were citizens that were disappointed with their lack of what they called professionalism as a committee, not
we're not professionals.
more explanatory.
We're amateurs.
Well, I know.
We did actually, I did include a comment in the booklet.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we only printed 300 booklets and there were 550 people there.
Right.
And several members got up independent of the AFC and expressed their viewpoints.
Right.
Also, our meetings that it's discussed are fully public. I mentioned to the chair, if we get questions like that, I can pull out the meeting minutes and read points for people. At other articles, there were certain people that were just not really willing to, if two people voted against it, they might have had their reasons and not necessarily want to make a big deal of it. So whatever.
People didn't think it was
fair
very
criticism.
responsible to say, well, go read our, watch our videos. You're there on town floor. You're not going to go watch somebody's meeting videos.
Well, I'm not sure how it would have helped the library for
it may not
5 people to have gotten up and said why they didn't vote for it.
Right. I have to say also that Mike, whose last name I forgot, gave a pretty powerful statement on maintaining costs. And I think that's probably most of the committee's motivation in any case. So, and it's a reasonable motivation. You can't argue that cutting costs is good. It's just the question is whether the library is worth it. And obviously, a lot of disagreement on that. John, you have your hand up.
Yeah. So my only question along those lines is, kind of some folks have touched on it. Will the select board, because there's a new warrant, okay, that's what will be closed tonight. I assume, by the time we get to a town meeting, these warrant articles have been reviewed and discussed at the separate meetings, and that's where you get the vote. The select boards, supported our project 5-0. AFC did not support the project at 2 to whatever the number was. Am I assuming that we'll have those numbers again? Because that's right. So the question is, so when will I guess
select board is voting tonight. The FinCom will vote on the 5th. We're printing apparently our report and recommendations in-house because of the time frame, so that allows it to get printed. It's going to be a couple pages or something this time, but so that's, yes, they have to revote. And to be clear to everybody, there is at least a 3rd article and possibly more Yeah, possibly up to 5
5.
articles on the warrant. So there'll be a couple after the library.
So I guess my only question is, from the standpoint of, and this goes kind of, I think, to Lee's point a little bit. And again, this is more of a town politics discussion. If we had a vote of 5-0 from the select board before supporting the project,
Mhm.
shouldn't we have a vote of 5-0 from the select board again? Because ultimately, you may not like the vehicle that got this here, but you either support the project or not. And is there a, like, will the moderator, I guess the moderator is going to do a job of explaining why we're here and how
He
we
is going
got
to do that.
But
We
I
had that
guess
discussion.
my concern is, I guess does someone need to attend the select board meeting tonight for those discussions? Because you would hope that if the only thing the select board didn't like about it was the fact that it's back again, the project is suffering. I want to say suffering, but you know what I'm saying. You're getting hit by a fact that you came back to the table by the actions of other people. This group didn't want to do it because for exactly that purpose, yet the citizens did. So, to Lee's point, are they going to be able? It's too bad if the vote is against, and it's against not because of the job, because wait a minute, a month ago you all liked the job. Do you know what I'm saying? The wrong thing is up for approval then, if that's the case. That's my only concern. And
Yeah, John, I'll be at the select board meeting tonight.
I will be as well.
I will be too, but
I will not this time.
yeah.
But
John,
I will plan to come to the AFC when that comes up.
so John, this has caused me great angst because I actually am I believe that the library project is the best way to accomplish the task and the best value. So I'm likely to vote in favor again. But at the same time, I have great reservations about doing things twice. So,
I agree.
I think everybody has to make their own choice. Is it possible that someone on the select board heard something between now and then that changed their mind? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I've discussed some of this with some of them alternatively, but you don't know. I mean, I think everybody has to it's your recommendation, so you have to go with what you feel at the time. I don't think there's hard and set rules.
No, and I think that's great. And I guess maybe, Maureen, that's something that dependent, let's say for the sake of discussion, you ended up with 0.5, and 0.8, like you're not completely unsupported because of the fact that it's a second crack or viewed by others. I think what would be important is to just, maybe that's part of the presentation. You may be unhappy with the fact that we're here, but we're here, and we're here through a citizen's petition, our own committee voted to not pursue this, but we are here. You know what I mean? And again, I don't know, maybe it's important to make that part of the opening of the presentation. The other presentation was great, but I think the things that we're hearing, we need to not saying we are, but we need to be not tone deaf, and I'm not saying we are, to the messages that we're hearing, and rather than wait for questions to address on rebuttal, come right out and say it. Listen, we hear you. We hear frustration with this. But here's where we are. Here's what we're doing to fix it. I guess hit it straight on. I guess is the way. Open and transparent is the way to do it, I think.
Pete?
Yeah, I had now accumulated 3 comments unrelated. One is in regard to the second bite of the apple comment. I think really the issue is it's an indictment of the town meeting form of government and in the size of our town and so forth. It's not about the library. And if people aren't happy with the second bite, they should be pushing for a charter committee and so forth and looking at the town meeting form of government and have that debate. The second point was before the select board votes, I think it would be useful to convey to them the $1.5 million that we have voted to take out of our proposal, so that they're voting on it with an understanding that the dollar levels may change and they may defer their vote until we actually take the dollars out or whatever. But I would think that showing that understanding and commitment to value engineering and so forth before the select board vote tonight would be a good tactical move. My 2 cents. The last thing was Lee had asked about lining up people to stand up and vote. One thought I had on that was they're basically parent teacher associations at each of the schools. If those groups could take a stance, and they're organized bodies that could come out with more weight than just an individual citizen, that might be a way to get recognized bodies to take a position. The town manager isn't going to do it and so forth. Maybe the select board members might, but I thought the PTA might be a body that would be in favor.
It's an interesting point.
Lee?
Yeah, I don't think that we should say we didn't want to revisit this, because that sounds like the library committee didn't think it was worth going ahead with our project. And that's not what we said. When we had that meeting, and we had citizens there who said that they would like to pursue having this revisited, we said we thought that was a very appropriate method to address this, and said that we were okay with them going forward with that initiative. I think it's very dangerous to make it sound like we didn't think it was worth continuing the efforts, or I don't want to say fight, if you will, but that we were ready to give up. I mean, we weren't ready to give up. We had a group saying we'd like to take this forward on behalf of the town and concerned citizens, and we supported that. So it could be a dangerous thing to say somewhere where they say, oh, well, the building committee didn't even want to go ahead. That's not a message we want to give.
Mm.
Well, I think we could say that we are still very much in favor of building the library, but we felt that trying to get a second vote as the representative of the library would not have been appropriate. We are very happy that the petitioners managed to get a working drive together.
Good.
Okay. Yeah, Maureen, can you, let's see, do we have Maureen?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, so I just went blind and didn't look at that corner thing. Can you, I really like Pete's idea of telling the select board about the results of today's meeting. That is that we've found a $1.5 million approximately cost reduction.
Yeah, I can shoot something to them as soon as we get off the call. Is John still here? Yeah, John's still here. John, can you just send me that section of the spreadsheet?
The MDLC piece? I'm sorry.
No, the new number that
Oh,
we
yes.
voted to approve.
Yep.
And then
absolutely.
I'll send it to
You
the
voted to approve
select
it.
board and ask for a minute to speak to that.
Sure, no problem.
Thanks.
So you don't want I'm just going to give you the roll up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions, thoughts, ideas from the group? Mary.
Maureen, when you have that moment when you're speaking, I think it's a good point to just add in there too, that we hope that when they frame their vote tonight, they're framing based on the project and not the process in which it's here. It's just another reminder to them.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts?
Move to adjourn.
We need to schedule our next meeting and then we can do that.
Okay.
Next meeting.
Our regularly scheduled
Happy
meeting.
Thanksgiving.
Our regularly scheduled meeting is usually next week, the last Tuesday of the month.
And
on
I
the
think we need a
29th.
meeting then in any case. So
Yeah.
let's just keep that meeting. Does that work for everyone?
Yes,
Okay, now I can take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Marie,
Amy, yes.
Ed Baldwin, yes. Walter,
Leslie, yes.
Lee,
Emery, yes.
Pete,
John Beck, yes.
Mary,
Johnson, yes.
Bob,
Petroselli, yes.
and I believe that's everybody. Okay, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Enjoy your Thanksgivings.
You too.
Talk to you on
Thanks.
Tuesday.
Yes.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.